Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Gemini Syndrome, Third Degree, The Raising, out October 15th on Century Media Records. This album has 13 tracks, 47 minutes in length, and this is the band's third full-length studio album. They are an American metal band. Now, this is a concept album. This is the final chapter on a trilogy that started with Lux. On this record, we're talking about life, energy, and what happens with rebirth and life after death. A really interesting concept, a really interesting finale for this trilogy that's been spanning 3 albums. Now, as far as the structure is concerned, I really like how they put this album together. Really well defined. You have a beginning, you have a middle, and you have an end. At the beginning, you have Reintegration. The opening track has a little bit of a built-in intro, gives you a little bit of a taste of what the soundscape of this album is going to be all about. Then you have an intermission with some Quod Eris, a song that really breaks the record into side A and side B, or perhaps giving you a restart into side B. And then you have the final track, Fiat Lux, a song that's definitely the outro, the closing ceremonies on this incredible trilogy. So really well structured, really well put together, really well defined, which I think it's really important for a record like this. Now, on side A and side B, you have a lot of similarities and you also have a lot of differences. Perhaps the main similarity is the quality of sound and the quality of execution stays true from one half into the other. You really don't see a drop. You really don't see a change, complete change in terms of how the execution of the songs were put together on the first side of the record versus the second side of the album. As far as differences are concerned, I really feel like it's the aggression, or perhaps the mood is a better word. The mood and the atmosphere of the first half is slightly different from the second. In the first half of the album, you have a lot more aggression, you have a lot more intensity. The album comes at you with a little bit more intent, and on the second half of the album, it's a little bit more melancholic, it's a little bit slower, it's a little bit darker at times. But this is perfect because you have to look at the bigger picture. You have to look at the evolution of the concept, you have to look at the evolution of the story. So from that perspective, the two halves work well together because one is the sequence of what happened in the other. And the fact that the album is broken, it gives you that ability to flip the vinyl over and have a different experience on side B than you had on side A, while still all being part of the larger picture. Now, you also have to talk about the lyrical content anytime you have a concept album like this, and I really felt that the lyrics played a very important role in my appreciation of this album. So I suggest you take the time to really dive deep into the lyrics and perhaps listen to the album with the lyrics at the same time next to you. I just feel like you're going to squeeze more juice out of this orange if you have the lyrics there, because a lot of what drives the experience is in the lyrical content and how that lyrical content interacts with the soundscape and the atmosphere that soundscape creates. The vocals also play a role in bringing those lyrics to life, so everything kind of comes together. But understanding the lyrics definitely is one of the key factors in you understanding much better what this album is all about. Now, as far as the soundscape is concerned, this is an album that has a lot to offer. There's a lot of different elements coming together, but overall it feels very rich, it feels very warm, it has a lot of sound, it has a lot of presence. It really feels like it has a life and a soul of its own, and you feel that from song to song. It's a record that doesn't flat out. It doesn't have slow parts that just are drained of life or drained of energy. Even the songs that have perhaps a little bit more of a melancholic drive, they still feel like they're taking you somewhere. They're still holding you by the hand and carrying you throughout the journey of the album. So I really love the overall experience, sound-wise, that this record has in store for the listener. Now, within this sound, I felt like there were different elements here that play an important role, or that sometimes play a role that helps define the experience, and that is the keys, the bass drums, and guitars. Now, the keys on this album really jump into the forefront as one of the main predominant elements. I don't feel like they necessarily drive the songs. They definitely have a positive impact on the atmosphere. You cannot have a concept album like this without having one of your elements within the sound helping that atmosphere become a little bit more palpable, becoming something that you can digest, not just listen to it, but you can almost see it, you can almost feel it. And I really felt the keyboards doing that throughout the entire album. Now, you could say that sometimes it feels like there's a little bit too much of it. I don't see it that way. I see them as an important element of the sound and atmosphere, how those two elements come together. I also feel like it's part of the DNA of the band. And I felt like they used that one element, but in different formats and with different formulas, in different amounts from song to song, in order for it to sound different, in order for it to feel different, and in order to get different results from it. Then you have the drums. The drum sound on this album is outstanding. It just has soul, it has energy, it has life, it feels warm, it's never flat, it never drains out, it always pumps the songs, it always gives a little bit of substance to every single track. And it doesn't matter if they're heavy in one song and not as heavy in the other, because they don't follow patterns and they don't follow formula, so they're going to be different depending on which track you're on. But the quality of the sound and the quality of the execution is absolutely outstanding from top all the way to the bottom. Now, the bass, in my opinion, could have been a little bit better. I felt that the bass at times, when it came through songs that really depended on it in order to create a foundation for the track, the bass sounded a little bit muddied. For a track and for an album that has songs and overall structure and overall design that's really well defined to the detail, I felt like the bass felt a little bit behind of what everything else was doing. So I wanted the bass a little bit better orchestrated, if you will, a little bit better defined with clear edges in order for the listener to understand exactly what was happening and not have it muddied everything else around it and making a little bit life difficult for the listener to understand exactly what is happening in certain given times, specifically when the bass is playing a predominant role. Now, the guitars on this record, once again, they're not an element that drives the experience, that drives the songs, but they do help steer you into the right direction as far as the atmosphere and as far as the heaviness or lack of that the songs have. So it plays an important role. It plays a role that changes from track to track, and it completely changes from the first half of the album into the second half. The way the guitars are put together in the second half of the album are completely different from the first half. They have a different attitude, they have a different sound, they have a different goal in mind in terms of what the record calls for, in terms of what the songs call for, but they always feel connected and they always feel like they're helping the listener and helping everything else stay together, stay unified, moving in the same direction. On top of it all, you have Aaron on vocals, and his vocals are outstanding on this album. I really like the range, I really like the tone, and I like the variety of approaches that we got depending on where we were, either be the first half of the album, the second half of the album, or even the design that the songs had. If the song had more of an electronic drive, then the vocals kind of went a little bit with that, almost moving the sound into industrial metal, which there's some glimpse of that throughout this record. This is an album that really touches on a lot of different genres. It doesn't have just a clear-cut pathway that tells you exactly what you're going to get genre-wise. This is an album that has a little bit of diversity from that perspective, and the vocals really play into that. They play into the atmosphere of the songs, they play into the drive of the album, they play into what the two halves of this record have to offer, and they also play off of the lyrical content and the energy that those lyrics give and where they are within the state of mind of the person that's narrating them. So I felt like the vocals all around really matched the energy of this record perfectly through and through. This is a record that has a lot to give. Perfect closing album for this trilogy. I really feel like everything has come together with this record, and everything that we saw in the two previous albums, it kind of made an appearance on this record, and then there was some new nuances that were floated in order to make the album stand out from the two previous records. But there's definitely a sense of progression, there's definitely a sense of motion outside of the bass, which I really feel is the weakest spot on this record from a soundscape perspective. Everything else is exactly where it needs to be, allowing this album to have a lot of strength for the listener to enjoy through and through. Now, as far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Baptised and Fire. It has a synth intro that works really well. Then the vocals come in, they add a little bit of this haunting feel, this haunting atmosphere to the track, and then the song starts to move and gain a little bit more intensity and gain a little bit more sound. The keys remain throughout this track. They're never necessarily always playing one role and being in the forefront. They come in waves. So sometimes they pop in a little bit more to the front and they drop a little bit more to the back, but you could always feel like they're playing an important role in keeping the substance and consistency of this track alive. The guitars give the song depth. They really sound chunky, they have volume to them, and they really make the song feel like it has a much larger footprint, overall making a lot of volume for the track. So this is a song that grows as it progresses. It doesn't stay still. It grows all the way until it reaches the chorus. Once it reaches the end of the chorus, it resets, it goes back to the beginning, and you start to see that growth once again. I like this design. I like what it does. I really enjoy this sense of growth, restart, growth, restart. It just makes the song feel engaging. It makes the song feel interesting. Next, you have Children of the Sun. The bass plays a setup in this track, and this is one of the tracks that I really felt like a better defined bass would have improved the overall experience of this song, because it kind of dirties the water ever so slightly. But still a great track. The verses have more of a stripped down effect, with the bass and drums playing perhaps more of a predominant role on the soundscape. Then you have the pre-chorus, which is more melancholic, and then you have the chorus, which is more melodic, with bigger sound, with bigger presence. A song that's made out of 3 different stages. All 3 stages sound different, feel different, and have a different atmosphere. But all of them are perfectly integrated together, so it doesn't feel chopped. The song really feels like it has a nice sequence to it, as it brings all of these 3 different worlds into one. Last but not least, where we started from, it has a very 80s sound, almost pop rock atmosphere with a little bit of an electronic influence, almost like new wave. So there's all of these different worlds, all of these different influences coming together in order to create a song that has a lot of different layers because of all of these influences and what they're doing to the overall soundscape. It becomes heavier as it progresses. You could feel like this is a track that is just like a snowball. It's just becoming bigger and bigger as it's going down the hill, and it gains momentum, it gains heaviness. Then it still drops a little bit into some melancholic dips. There's some areas of this song where you feel like the air has come out of the balloon, that the song has come down, that the energy has been removed, but then the track picks up back again almost to where it started before, and it gains that energy again. Because of these nuances that the track has, and because it doesn't have a linear motion, it's a song that's very hard to predict what's going to happen next. Because of that, it makes the track really engaging, really dynamic, really interesting all around. This is it, Gemini Syndrome, with their latest record, Third Degree, The Raising, out October 15th on Century Media Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.